Hey, I'm Ryan, and today I'm going to be counting down my top albums of all time. This is actually my third year in a row going through this process, but it is the first time I'm doing it in video form, so it's going to be a little more off the cuff. The previous editions were just like blog posts, but because I do have that data, I am able to show, how things have moved around. Have albums gone up or down? Are they new to the list? And I will say my top 50 is still very fluid with all the new music that I'm listening to. And just, really, while I can think back to my childhood and I've just loved music for as long as I can remember, it's really only in the last 4 to 5 years or so that I've become very intentional about my music discovery and seeking out new albums and listening to lots and lots of new albums every year and pushing myself out of my comfort zone to listen to music that I wouldn't necessarily listen to. And there's a lot of albums on this list that are very kind of unexpected albums that I've come to love. And so I think there's definitely a bit of a recency bias with just the sampling of, I just have listened to a lot more recent albums and rated them, so that naturally has led to a lot more of those being on here. That said, I think I have multiple entries from every decade back to the 60s, so a pretty good spread there and a pretty good spread across genres. I'm sure pretty much anybody that's watching can probably find something here that they would really like and also find something that they would absolutely hate. So hopefully it'll be kind of interesting to hear me ramble about why these are some of my favorites of all time. And if you're interested in, how someone like myself has their tastes evolve year over year, consider subscribing to the channel, because I'll probably do this again next year and we can see how things shift, see what was a flash in the pan, see what has staying power. But I got 50 albums to talk through here, so I got to be good about staying on schedule, and let's just jump into this with my number 50, which is This It?, the debut album from The Strokes. Now, this has dropped a little bit for me, but is still just a super solid album from a band that I enjoy quite a bit. I think it's still one of their strongest and most consistent albums. They have a very distinctive style with both Julian Casablanca's vocal style as well as just the interplay between the electric guitars. A lot of stuff that's very simple, straightforward rock, but has just some interest with the arrangements. Fun and catchy, still an album I enjoy a lot. My number 49 is going to be the first time we talk about Tom Waits. This is Mule Variations. This is a huge surprise artist for me in the past 3 years or so. Tom Waits has become one of my all-time favorites, and this is actually the first time Mule Variations is making it onto the list. I think I had just started listening to it, and it was kind of hovering outside last year, but it's risen a little bit for me. Really a shockingly consistent album for how long it is. I think it's 70 minutes, and you get the whole range of the Tom Waits experience here. You get the ballads, you get the kind of more rocking tracks, and a lot of weird stuff too, as you often get from Tom Waits. If you've never listened to Tom Waits, this wouldn't necessarily be a bad jumping on point. I will say he's a pretty acquired taste. It was not love at first sight for me with his music, but man, once it started clicking for me, just so many of his albums, he's got a really rich discography, and Mule Variations ends up making my list this year. At 48, I have maybe the least known album on this entire list. This is Welcome to the Garden by Emily Steinwall. And this one I actually have to give a shout out to a different YouTube channel from a different Ryan that recommends music. I believe the channel is Not Real Music. He mentioned this album in a video and mentioning that he felt it was underrated, and I totally agree. I was like, how do not more people know about this album? It's hard to know how much of my enjoyment of it comes from just the epic title track, this 10-minute big lush it's kind of this chamber pop, but it's got a lot of lush strings and harmonies and saxophone, and there's just some really cool stuff going on here, and I think a lot of the other tracks are strong and catchy as well. This one's pretty new to me, so it's hard to know where this is going to kind of land ultimately. But man, really underrated. I mean, this one really does not have a lot of streams from what I can tell. Definitely worth a look. At 47, we have Muses Volume 1 from Natalia Lafourcade, another huge surprise artist that has become one of my favorite in recent years. Really, as I started to branch more out to being willing to listen to non-English albums, I don't speak Spanish, so I don't understand the lyrics on this album, but it just shows you how music transcends language with how much I have enjoyed a lot of her music. It's a great collection of just acoustic, both catchy but really beautiful songs, and I just really, the more I've enjoyed her music, the more Muses Volume 1 specifically. Music Volume 2 is very good as well. That would probably maybe just miss my top 50. I think Volume 1 is my favorite out of those two. Just so smooth and nice to listen to. Next up, at 46, we have Mahashmashana from Father John Misty. This is another new one to the list, and another one that has just been slowly climbing from when I first listened to it. It was actually my introduction to Father John Misty. I've listened to some of his other albums at this point, but this one starts with very big, epic, lush title track, not that unlike Welcome to the Garden. But every track on this is just really solid and just it flows well as an album. He's got a very kind of distinct style with his vocals and lyrics and presentation, and it's growing on me. It really is. I don't know if this is a long time stay up here in my favorite albums, but I'm pretty high on this one specifically right now and have been enjoying some of his other albums as well. Number 45, we have another example of why branching out of English-speaking albums has been very rewarding for me, and this is Ahora o Nunca from Candelabro. I think this is a Chilean band, kind of an indie art rock style, and it's just really, really well done. Really great arrangements here. The instrumentation. Got to give a shout out to the bass player, who I feel like has really got some tasteful stuff on this record that really helps the songs flesh out. So this is one I actually, as of recording this, Candelabro's new album just came out within the last week, and I've given it a couple listens and have enjoyed it. So far, my feelings are Ahora o Nunca is still my favorite, but I need to give it time because it took time with this one for it to rise as high as it did. This made my list last year, and I think I said something along the lines of, this feels high. I don't know if this will stick around. It only dropped 4 spots. It's staying up here. So definitely worth a look, and another just reminder to myself to be willing to branch out to other languages when it comes to seeking out new music. Next at 44, we have a pretty kind of poppy record with Submarine by the Marias. This was my introduction to the Marias. Seems to have become very, very popular at this point, and I know they even opened for Billie Eilish, and so they definitely have gotten quite a bit bigger, but this has just got a cool vibe to it. This kind of really kind of tight, I don't know how to describe it, but it's very catchy and funky, and just this is the kind of pop I can vibe with. It's got some really just cool, good hooks and things that you would expect from pop, but just in this kind of tight, funky instrumentation that it clicks for me. I've been enjoying this one a lot. Number 43 was on my list last year and has actually risen a few spots, and this is A Boat on the Sea by Moron Police. This is an album that when I listened to it for the first time, I was like, that was cool, but a little bit too over the top. It's kind of this crazy virtuosic playing that clearly is not holding back with the arrangements and the instrumentation. Very sugary is kind of how I sometimes describe it. But the more I listened to it, the more it was man, the songwriting, the catchiness, and just everything, it actually just had more staying power than I was expecting it to have. And this is just more evidence of it, with it even moving up my list a little bit. So if you want kind of a prog rock album that's a lot more, I would say, some prog rock can be very kind of minor key, kind of darker vibe. Whereas this, I feel is a little bit more of this uplifting, lighthearted feel. This one's a lot of fun and worth checking out if you like that kind of more progressive rock style music. Onwards to 42, we have the first entry here from Radiohead. This is A Moon-Shaped Pool. And this one's dropped a little bit for me, but I even, before putting this list together, and I went and like listened to all these albums as part of the process to put this list together. This is an album I always forget how much I like it until I go back and listen to the whole album on my good headphones, and then I'm reminded of just how good it is. This is not an album that when songs come up in shuffle, you're like, ooh, I really want to listen to this track right now, because it is a very atmospheric album that like you kind of have to be in the right mood for it, and you have to be able to sit with the music. It's a little more slower developing, but really good. I mean, it really is this lush, mysterious, beautiful music. And so it sticks here on the list, I guess, with my annual intentional listen reminding me just how good it is. Next, we have a classic. This is Inner Visions by Stevie Wonder. Stevie's got so much fun music. I think Inner Visions is one of his most just representative albums of just, it's a pretty short, I think it's like 9 or 10 songs, really solid, just like, it would be a great entry point to Stevie Wonder if for some reason you haven't listened to Stevie Wonder before. There's just so much to like about what Stevie brings to the table with the funk, the soul, his killer voice, and just ridiculous versatility across instrumentation and songwriting. This one, spoiler, is not my top Stevie Wonder album, but it's up there. It's very, very good and makes it in at my number 41. Next at number 40, we have another Radiohead album. This is In Rainbows. This one, again, has dropped a little bit for me. I don't know if there's much of a reason for that. I feel like this is like, in my mind, when I think like art rock, this is almost like the poster child album in my head. Just, it takes a lot of these rock elements, but just pushes them into a lot more artistic directions, which is true of Radiohead just in general. But I think this album very specifically like still stays in that kind of like rock lane, and there's a lot of guitar work carrying the tunes here, but really goes into some interesting soundscapes. It's just really, really good. I know a lot of people, this might be their favorite Radiohead record. It is nearly my favorite Radiohead record. Number 39, we have Quebec by Ween. This one dropped actually, 18 spots from last year. I think it debuted last year. Still a really great album from a very interesting band that, kind of started out much more of almost this comedy novelty band. But I mean, you get to an album like Quebec and it's like, oh man, this is got some really beautiful and like, touching lyrics on it and stuff, but then at the same time it'll mix it up and like throw you a curveball on the next track. So it's a little bit eclectic. I think it gets brought down a little bit just because for me there are several tracks that I'm not as high on across this one. So as listening as a full album experience, I find myself not as fully engaged as some albums, but still just enough really great stuff here that it still has to make my list. Next at 38, we have an album that probably dates back farther than most albums on this as far as when I first listened to it and was a fan of it, because this was kind of before I was really into discovering a lot of new music, and this is An Awesome Wave by Alt J. It's their debut album. I still think it's by far their best. They have this very unique kind of approach to their rock, I guess you would call it. The vocals might be make or break for a lot of people, whether you like his vocal style. But this is one I just really, really enjoy. And I think, way back when I wasn't listening to a lot of albums, it was a reminder to me of how much I enjoyed listening to albums as albums and not just seeking out singles. Because I think this one flows really well. And that's going to maybe be a trend as we get higher on this list, is I really do love the art form of the album and listening to it as an album. If not evidenced by me spending time making a video counting down my top 50 albums. So it has dropped, looks like in lockstep with Ween, 18 spots, but still really, really like this debut record from Alt J. Next, we have a new one, and this will be probably not the last time I say that. Man, I don't know if this will stay this high. We'll let time tell. But right now, I'm pretty high on Empathogen by WILLOW. The obvious talking point here is that WILLOW is actually the daughter of Will Smith and has a history as a, child actor and child, making pop music from a very young age. And she's gone through a lot of, and if you listen through her discography, a lot of different styles and stuff. But what she's landed on this record, which is like this very jazz influenced funk pop that's, very interesting in the arrangements. I really love it, honestly. There's some interesting interlude stuff on here. That I could see some people feeling like the album flows a little strangely or just like isn't fully fleshed out, but I've actually come to like a lot of even the interlude. It's just got a really cool sound to it, and has seen a lot of play in my rotation since I first found it. So we'll see if it sticks around. So I've definitely had albums that have debuted I've been very high on them initially, and they've slowly fallen. But so far, this is one I've really enjoyed, and I'm kind of hoping she stays in this lane for future albums instead of, genre hopping as she has been, because I really think it's a great fit for what she has to bring to the table. Next up, number 36, I guess it dropped 21 spots, but still an album I really love, and this is Yankee Hotel Foxtrot by Wilco. I have not listened to actually a lot of Wilco. It's really this album, and then is Summer Teeth the name of the other album, which is another very strong album that would probably make my top 100. But Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, I think, is their best. Really unique album with just the balance of kind of, straightforward melody hooks and instrumentation, but with this like experimental edge with noises and just interesting things that, man, it's that kind of stuff that on repeated listen can just really, when done well, enrich the depth of an album over time. And so this is still one I really, really enjoy. Honestly, it's only really, I say it's only really gone up for me. Well, it dropped 21 spots apparently, but I feel like that might have more to do with new music coming in than like my opinion of it in a vacuum. But really, really good one here, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. Still really enjoy it. Number 35, we have, similar to the Alt J album, this is one that dates back really to the age of music discovery for me. And this is Bang Bang by Dispatch. Dispatch, there's probably a time where I would have said Dispatch is one of my favorite bands of all time. This remains my favorite Dispatch album. I think it comes from a place of just like familiarity. There's such like kind of sing-alongable types of songs like that put you in a good mood and are catchy. It's so hard for me to know like how much of it is kind of this nostalgic attachment to the album versus like, if I'd been introduced to this today, would it have landed the same way? But hey, you can't really separate those types of factors when making a list like this. And I still enjoy listening to it, which at the end of the day is what gets it onto the list. Unique blend of kind of acoustic folk, jam band stuff, a lot of fun harmonies in this one. So still, Dispatch is still on the list, despite maybe some of their other albums kind of slowly dropping off for me. Next up, we have a new entry from Jack White. This is his newest album, No Name. And I had not really listened to Jack White's solo material. I really only knew some of his stuff from the White Stripes, but gave this record a listen. And man, it is just... And having actually now listened to a lot of his other music, I feel like this is him like at his best, honestly. At least for my taste, this is my favorite project he's put out. It takes a lot of, what people I think like about Jack White, what I like about it, of this straightforward riffs and kind of interesting phrasing with his vocal delivery, but just the set of tracks here are just the right level of catchy, but also rocking and just, really enjoying this one. And like I said, comfortably my favorite of any project he's worked on. I've been slowly going through back some of his other stuff, but No Name is my favorite. At 33, we got another new one, and this is one that I'm actually surprised to see is new because it feels like I've been listening to them so much, but I guess it was shortly after making my list last year that I kind of really got into them. This is the Lemon Twigs with Everything Harmony. And this was my introduction to the Lemon Twigs and has just been a continual grower. I am a fan of kind of the clear inspiration for a band like Lemon Twigs, which is kind of this 60s, 70s, retro, sunshine, Baroque pop style era. I think Beatles, think Beach Boys. But I just really think they are doing an incredible job of taking that inspiration and bringing it into their own thing in these modern albums. And Everything Harmony has just got a lot of great tracks on it, great harmonies, as you would expect from the name. So glad that this one kind of grabbed me initially and got me to explore more of their work because I've really enjoyed a lot of the other stuff I've listened to from them. So Everything Harmony debuting at number 33. Next up, number 32, we have something a lot heavier than most of what I've talked about so far. You know, I don't listen to a lot of like really heavy like death metal or these types of things. Honestly, it's usually the harsh vocals that put me off from a lot of that music. But a band that has really kind of landed for me on that heavier side is Leprous, and my favorite from them is Bilateral. And this is, you know, progressive metal, I guess is how I would describe it, but it's got more clean vocals. There are some kind of harsh vocals here, but strong, clean vocals that's a little bit more what I enjoy, but a lot of just really rockin' cool tracks here. And Leprous has a very distinct style with their syncopated playing with rhythms and time signatures and stuff. The I think second track here, Forced Entry, is just this epic, awesome track. It is a really, I mean, it might be one of my favorite, I would say like heavier progressive rock tracks ever. So really, really glad that I gave this band a try. I've enjoyed some of their other albums as well, but Bilateral, really, really good stuff that is debuting here all the way at number 32. We've had a stretch of new albums there. My number 31 has been on the list, I think, for the last couple years and has actually moved up 4 spots. This is Swordfish Trombones from Tom Waits. This is the album that like begins the era of Tom Waits that I really, really love. He has a ton of albums before this that are a little bit more traditional jazz piano songwriter. And then Swordfish Trombones, he really starts to explore this new persona that's probably going to be off-putting to a lot of people on first listen. But man, the more I've listened to it, the more I have just come to love his style, the way he paints a picture with music, and not just like the notes and the melodies, but how he decides to record and the instruments he uses to really give a vibe. And man, I really, really enjoy Swordfish Trombones. I think it is a really consistent and awesome record, from start to finish. Yeah, Tom Waits, man. It's one of the hardest ones for me to describe why I like his music so much, because it almost feels like it shouldn't land for me as well as it has. But it really has become a favorite of mine. Next up at 30, we have, did I mention progressive rock? This is maybe like the poster child historically for progressive rock. This is Yes with the album Close to the Edge. This is definitely one that took several listens to digest. It kind of hits you in the face, and it's pretty complex, and it's, you know, the title track is very, very long. There's only 3 tracks on the album. But this is one that has just been a grower and ended up having a lot of staying power for me. I really just love a lot of what's happening here. You know, it finds that balance of the complexity serving the song, at least on repeated listens. It maybe took me a little while to get there, but really, really enjoy Close to the Edge by Yes. Number 29, dropping a little bit this year, we have Ants from Up There from Black Country New Road. This is kind of a modern art rock with a little bit more lush instrumentation. You know, you got some strings and saxophone and things. And it's one that it's pretty, I mean, it seems to be very, very well received. I mean, it's a very, very highly rated, at least on these online music communities. Really, really love this album. I really enjoyed it as well. it's an interesting one because the lead singer Isaac Wood left the band right after this album was released, so it's kind of like this, the band has really had to reinvent itself, and so this album kind of still sits as this time capsule of almost a different band, because especially his vocal style brings such a distinct angle to their music. But I still really, really enjoy this one. It's my favorite thing that the band has put out, and it comes in at my number 29. Number 28, and going up 2 spots, we have Keep It Like a Secret from Built to Spill. I was actually introduced to this band through their other album, Perfect From Now On, I believe is that one, which I think a lot of people, that would be the favorite. I've actually come to enjoy Keep It Like a Secret even more. I think it's a little bit more, the songs are a little tighter and punchier, and I just find myself wanting to come back to it more than I did with their other record. Really just guitar-driven pop rock, a lot of catchy hooks and stuff, but the guitar work here is just really, really nice. Like if you pay attention to kind of just the interplay of the different electric guitar parts, there's just some really nice stuff going on here that I think really separates it from a lot of kind of more guitar-driven pop rock. So this is one that's sticking around and even going up a little bit for me. Next, we have Funeral from Arcade Fire at number 27. Arcade Fire is an interesting band. A lot of strong records early on in their discography. Funeral remains my favorite. I just really love a lot of what's going on here with the instrumentation and songwriting. It flows well as an album, which is it's one of those traits that's just going to help albums move up on this list, is when I really just love listening to it in its entirety. It's been a grower. This is one that goes back quite a ways that I remember listening to this album. And it's really kind of just kept going up, I guess, until this year when it dropped 11 spots. I'm just going to keep saying that. It's a grower until right now. No, I still really enjoy this one. Just what I'm saying about every single album on here. Another album I still really enjoy is Paranoid by Black Sabbath. This is an oldie, one of the kind of OG albums of kind of bringing in this more heavy metal. And I've listened to some other Black Sabbath. I honestly need to explore more Black Sabbath, more of Ozzy Osbourne's solo career. But Paranoid, something about this album just hits for me. The guitar work and bass and drums and just it's one of those albums that when you're listening to it, you can really pick out the parts and how they're interplaying, and it's so clean and it just sounds so good, but it rocks so hard, and it's good stuff. So this one has just really held for me. It is kind of maybe one of the heavier albums that kind of makes it up here onto the top of my list. Next up at 25, we have How to Be a Human Being by Glass Animals. Now, don't even get me started on Glass Animals being the poster child of a band that hit a high for me and just fell off so hard. The gap between how I feel about this album and how I feel about some of their newer music almost could not be bigger. But I tell you, where they were at for this specific album, How to Be a Human Being, I really just like the style of kind of electronica pop, like a lot of these kind of like electronic sounds, and then pop with just like a little bit of unconventional arrangements. And I just think there's a lot of interest on this album, a lot of stuff that just really sounds good, a lot of character. And so it's one that has really stuck around for me as a favorite, even if the band has not, as time has gone on. Next up, this might be the biggest riser on the list. Up 16 spots. At number 24, we have Marquee Moon by Television. This is another one with just some outstanding guitar work. This band, I think they even were in the same kind of music scene as Talking Heads, and there's a little bit I get from, the vocal style, but it's a very different angle that they take with the guitar work, and I just really love a lot of the riffs and stuff that are in this album. The songs all have just such distinctive hooks and really stand alone. You know, you don't feel like you're just listening. There's a lot of albums that you feel like you're kind of listening to the same song over and over again. So this one has just kept going up for me. We'll see if it keeps going up. I did listen to their follow-up album. I think it's called Adventure, which was good, but this debut just really feels like they kind of captured lightning in a bottle as far as their strengths as a band. Really great album. Marquee Moon. At number 23, we have Modern Vampires of the City by Vampire Weekend. Vampire Weekend is a band that definitely at one point was one of my favorite bands. Again, this is a little bit of pre-heavy music discovery. This remains my favorite album by them. Even though their new album is quite good and has actually got a lot of buzz, The Only God Was Above Us. Like that album, it's probably somewhere in the mix with their other albums for like my next favorite. But Modern Vampires of the City, it just, for my taste, it's them at their best. It's just got really, really great songwriting and melodies and hooks and the kind of quirky interest that they bring to the table. It was the last album that was made with their original full lineup, and still one that I just really enjoy a lot. At number 22, going up 3 spots, apparently, we have High Visceral, Part 1 by the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets. I feel like every time I talk about them in a video, I have to just admit that it's a really dumb name for a band, but they have overcome that and end up being one of the heavier kind of, again, prog rock, or I guess this is a little bit more of a psychedelic rock, that has just really, really landed for me, where a lot of other things in the genre, I'll listen to it and be like, oh, that was good, but I'm not going to come back to it. This is a band, I've really kept up with them and continued to enjoy their albums since listening to these original releases some number of years ago. But still, these debut albums, High Visceral Part 1 and spoiler alert, Part 2 might be on here as well. Still my favorites. I still think it's the best that they've put out. They've come close. I mean, there's been they've been pretty consistent, honestly. But this is still just my favorite. Just fun riffs. A lot of what you might like from this genre of just like these kind of rocking riffs, but it's a band that doesn't take themselves too seriously. And so there's kind of a fun edge to it as well. At number 21, we have another Lemon Twigs album, and this is A Dream Is All We Know, and this is actually my favorite, which was a little bit of a surprise because I enjoyed Everything Harmony so much that, you know, when an artist releases a new album, it's like, are they really going to surpass this album that I enjoy so much? And it's honestly pretty close, these two. But this one, I just really feel it's leaning maybe a little bit more into the Sunshine Baroque pop angle of it, where I feel like Everything Harmony had a little bit more ballads and some of these things. But I just love like all the songs here, you know, just listening to this one. It's just a fun, happy record. Flows really well. I just really like what the Lemon Twigs are doing. I actually got to see them live at a small venue where they played a bunch of songs off of this album as well as their previous album. Great show. If you ever have the chance to see them live, I highly recommend it. Really love A Dream Is All We Know by the Lemon Twigs, which brings me into my top 20, which we are going to start off with an album that definitely feels like it's here against all odds because it's a little heavier and it's really eclectic and kind of bizarre. This is California by Mr. Bungle. It's a crazy album. I mean, if you listen to this, your first listen of it is definitely going to have several moments of what the heck am I listening to? You know, I think the genre descriptors for this included like experimental rock, surf rock, doo-wop, and avant-garde metal. And so that gives you a little bit of a idea of the genre spanning that we might do here. But while it's really bizarre, it's still so grounded in like good songwriting, good strong hooks and melodies and rocking parts, and just like I've come to it. I mean, it genuinely sounds really good to me. You know, I could see some people hating this, but it's resonating with me for whatever reason. It's even gone up a couple spots from last year. It's definitely an album that like isn't really feeling like it's competing with other albums on this because it's so unique that it just kind of is in its own lane. And I love finding albums like that just feel like nothing else I've listened to, but still strike something in me that I love listening to them. Number 19, I hinted at this. It's High Visceral Part 2 from the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets. I always have a hard time. Part 1 and Part 2 feel so close to me. I consistently end up ranking Part 2 a little bit higher. But it's basically everything I liked about Part 1. Again, just lots of fun, heavy riffs, a nice mix of heavier, but also some more laid back songs on this, at least for, comparatively. And so while I like their whole discography, these are the two albums that really shoot up and make my list here and have been here for a few years. I think they've kind of held in this area of my list. Next up, we've got a classic progressive rock album. This is Red from King Crimson. This is my favorite King Crimson album. I do enjoy In the Court of the Crimson King, as well as... I'm going to be forgetting what the other one is. I need to listen through more of their discography. There's still albums that I haven't done, but Red just really hits what I enjoy from a band like this. Only 5 tracks, and one of them is really kind of more avant-garde instrumental, like a completely improvisational piece. Even that one, Providence, has grown on me within the context of the album and kind of the brooding atmosphere it creates. But the other 4 tracks here are just killer. Really nice building and really strikes that balance for me. Sometimes progressive rock can just get a little bit too, we're trying to be progressive, or it's like, this is more interesting than sounding good, at least to my ears. This finds that balance, rocks hard, and it's a great one. Great album. Number 17, going up 10 spots and, following up apparently a little higher than a bunch of these kind of heavier albums. We have a very lush, beautiful kind of folk singer-songwriter album, and this is Blow Me by Susanne Sundfør. I might be mispronouncing that. But this was actually my introduction to Susanne Sundfør, and I learned as I went back through her discography that it's a little bit of a different direction. Earlier in her career, it was a lot more of these like heavier synth pop tunes, a lot more electronic sounds, whereas her most recent albums are much more acoustic and kind of these lush arrangements. This remains my favorite from her, which other fans of hers probably wouldn't pick this as their favorite. And I don't know if it's because I listened to it first, but there are just, I think it flows really well. There's even some kind of like, I don't know if I'd say experimental tracks, but there's like some spoken word things or kind of some interludes that over time I've come to like them in their place in the album and how they kind of set the stage for kind of the more single tracks to shine. I think it's just a beautiful album, beautiful harmonies, good songwriting, just really one of my favorites in this more laid-back singer-songwriter genre. Next at number 16, we have something that is not that, but another artist that came out of nowhere this year and is hitting high here up on my top 50 with some new albums. And this is HELLMODE from Jeff Rosenstock. Now, listening to more Jeff Rosenstock stuff, like, it's right on this razor's edge of like, I should not like it. This very kind of like pop punk style of very high energy and sometimes a little abrasive. But I am finding, at least on a couple of his albums, that it just manages to hit into what I would want out of this genre. And HELLMODE is really a great example of that. Just, it's got full of great hooks and kind of tight, high energy instrumentation. Like, while it's very like high energy and kind of this punk feel, when you're listening to the instrumentation that's happening, you're like, this is well written, the way the guitar parts and everything is coming together here. So this is a high debut. I have no idea where, some of his albums here are going to land in the long run, but really, really have enjoyed this one. and glad that this was my entry point to exploring more of his stuff, and very glad that it made the impression it did. Because honestly, if I listened to maybe some of his other stuff first, I might have not listened to a lot of his other albums. Up to 15, we have yet another Tom Waits album. This is Bone Machine. And this is just some of Waits' best. It's got a little bit of a darker feel, and just it's following the same trajectory as like so many of his other albums for me, of just climbing up and up. The more I listen to it, the more I familiarize myself with the songs. It just has so much character. I think I've come to love the variety of types of songs he has on these albums. Like as an album, it just makes it a very rewarding listening experience, I think, to go from kind of a more ballad to kind of an, more interesting, upbeat, abrasive thing. And I don't know, it just like, it ends up being a very rich and diverse listening experience. I also say Tom Waits is killer at closing albums. I believe That Feel is the closer on this one, which is just this great cathartic closing track. And I feel like that's true of several of his albums, that just the closing track, I feel like, just really wraps it up in such a good way to cap off the album. So Bone Machine, down a few spots, but still strong here in the teens. Bringing us to my favorite Strokes album, and this is actually their newest album, The New Abnormal. I wasn't really expecting this to happen from when I first listened to it, and I enjoy so many of their other albums, but over time, it's like I got to the point where I just had to like admit that this was my favorite album by them. It was the one that I kind of most wanted to listen to, and that's kind of remained true as years have gone by. Just super consistent. It's definitely got a different style. Like if you listen to Is This It and then you listen to this one, you can definitely see a band that's not just in the same lane that they were at the beginning of their careers. But really still bring so many of their strengths to the table in a new, fresh way. Really enjoy The New Abnormal. At number 13, we have our first mention here of Sufjan Stevens with Illinois. Now, Sufjan Stevens has a very diverse and deep discography, and a lot of it is really like kind of this maximalist, off the walls. And I would say Illinois is pretty maximalist, but it's definitely more in the lane of like acoustic or more folk style, like the types of instruments he's bringing in. There's banjo and these types of things here, whereas some of his later albums, like Age of Ads, for example, is more maximalist from kind of a electronic feel coming into it. But Illinois still, to me, feels like the, like if I had to give you one album and said, this is what Sufjan Stevens is like, I think this is still the one I would recommend. The scope and creativity here, I mean, it's just this big album, but it's so consistent. It flows well. It just brings so many of his strengths to the table. I mean, when he was in the studio recording this album, the fact that he recorded this and then also produced the B-sides album, The Avalanche, which is another strong album in and of itself, just shows the creative explosion that was happening right now. So yeah, still one of my favorites of all time, and definitely one of my favorites from Sufjan. At number 12, we have another brand new Jeff Rosenstock album. There were two albums from him specifically that just nailed it for me. It was HELLMODE as my intro, but ultimately my favorite is Worry. And seeing the number 12 next to this just feels a little extreme, given the newness of it and kind of the out of my normal genres that maybe this is. And honestly, another factor was that there's also a lot more like swearing in this music than a lot of music I enjoy, which part of the downside of that is my ability to, crank it when I have kids around or whatever. And if you go listen to this album, it definitely comes out of the gate with more of that, as does HELLMODE, now that I think about it. But man, it's just really, really good stuff. This album almost has a like an Abbey Road style structure with a lot of like singles on the front, but then it goes into this really awesome medley on the back half where it's going from song to song. And It's really good. It's my favorite thing from Jeff Rosenstock. This and HELLMODE are close. They're close, and we'll see if they kind of stay like this. But yeah, debuting super high. 2 albums in my top 20. We'll see if that's an overreaction here in year 1. To number 11, just missing the top 10, we do have my favorite Sufjan Stevens album, and this is Carrie and Lowell. And I said a lot of his stuff kind of has this maximalist approach. This is an example of him kind of going the other direction. This is a stripped back, acoustic driven album, very emotionally driven, kind of exploring the loss of his mom and just some of these things. And I'm not a huge lyrics guy. Like, if I'm being honest, most of the albums that rank where they do on this list is not primarily because of lyrics. Like, but this is one that just, it comes together perfectly, like what he set out to do and what he achieved. And it just, I think, has a shocking amount of staying power relative to the complexity of the instrumentation. You know, when you really strip it back like this, the songwriting just really has to carry it to be this good, and it does here. Also have to give a shout out to, there's a live version of this album that's also very cool. It's almost like he takes it and then says, well, what if I added a little bit of that maximalist spice back into it and made it kind of a bigger experience. And it's a very cool, if you especially come to love this album, it's very fun to go and listen to that big live one. We are into the top 10, though, and it is the first but not last time that I am going to talk about Snarky Puppy, and this is their album Silva. Snarky Puppy, jazz fusion rockin' band that I enjoy a lot of what they've put out. You know, this is fully instrumental. There's not a lot of fully instrumental music that's making my top 50, but Snarky Puppy is one that is really just nailed it for me. In just, there's so much of it that's like grooving, you know, stank face with what's happening, but then there'll be, especially on Silva, just some beautiful passages. And, you know, this album specifically is them collaborating with I'm going to forget the name of the orchestra, the Metropole something orchestra. And it really just comes together great here. Now, I do know that shortly here, Snarky Puppy is actually releasing kind of the spiritual successor to this 10 years later, Insomni, which is them collaborating again with the same orchestra. And so far from what I've heard of the singles, it sounds promising. So who knows? It's always it's like, man, you're talking one of my favorite albums of all time. Like, am I going to get another one that I enjoy quite to this level? We will see. But Silva, great stuff, and might be my favorite oh, that's not true. Almost my favorite instrumental album. Number 9, we have a classic. We are back to the 60s. This is Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. Now, I grew up with the Beach Boys' greatest hits in my household, and so that's a very nostalgic, like Beach Boys harmonies. It's a very nostalgic thing. I never listened to Pet Sounds until, you know, my music discovery phase here in the past several years. And this is just continues to grow for me. I mean, this is such a rich achievement in music. I know this one often gets thrown out as top albums of all time and these things. And I think there's a lot of people that they're going to listen to it and be like, it was just a thing, you know, because of its significance back then, or it just doesn't really land. And I probably had a little bit more ability to get over that because I already enjoyed the Beach Boys sound just from my childhood. But the more I listen to this album, it is just outstanding songwriting, outstanding melodies and harmonies, and just the instrumentation behind it is interesting, but yet has these kind of pop leanings at times, and just, it's so far ahead of any other album that the Beach Boys put out. I mean, I know a lot will talk about Smile, which never actually came out as a Beach Boys album, being on a similar level. I have listened to Smile Sessions and some of these other things. Pet Sounds for me is still, it's the best from the Beach Boys. I like some other singles, but Pet Sounds as an album, absolutely outstanding. We're into outstanding territory here in my top 10. At number 8, we have my favorite album from Radiohead, and this is OK Computer. Now, I like a lot of, their later era in experimentation. An album like Kid A actually isn't quite as high for me. I enjoy it, but not quite as high as some of these other ones. But for me, OK Computer and just the lane that they're still in of like really kind of rocking and guitar driven in the way they are on this album is still just my favorite iteration of Radiohead. There's just awesome stuff on this. Very both experimental but grounded in just rocking, well-written songs. Yeah, I know it's another one that pops up on a lot of top lists, but I can't deny that I also very much enjoy OK Computer by Radiohead. Speaking of albums that are often very high on all-time rating lists, we have at number 7, Abbey Road by the Beatles. Now, I don't know that I haven't had any Beatles on this list so far. So I enjoy the Beatles a lot. And actually, if we were expanding this to my top 100, there's probably like 3 other, the Beatles albums that would potentially make it. You got Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's. You've got Magical Mystery Tour. All of those like albums I really, really enjoy. For me, Abbey Road is like a significant step ahead. It remains my favorite. It has some of my favorite of all time Beatles songs. The way it flows as an album. Again, that medley on the back half and just the way just really clicks for me. It has this timeless quality to it. And there's a reason that I think it's well deserved that this album gets the acclaim that it does. Though it's dropped 5 spots. It was my number 2 last year. And part of that is because my number 6 is brand new. Man, feel wild having some brand new albums here in the top 10, but this is just a snapshot in time of how I feel right now. And this is 3D Country by Geese. This genuinely, as evidence here, is growing into one of my favorite albums of all time. It's a very kind of eclectic. It's one of these albums that when I first started listening to it, especially with the opener, 2122, kind of comes out of the gate, like really hitting you in the face. And I was like, man, this is going to be one of those albums that I like parts of it, but there's just too much kind of abrasive out there stuff that I don't enjoy that I just am probably not going to like it. But as it went on, it was like, oh, it kind of reeled it in and really had some nice, tasteful songs with the instrumentation. And I just, it's just grown and grown and grown. It's one of my most listened to albums in the last several years. And, the vocals from Cameron Winter are going to be kind of the make or break for a lot of people, whether they're going to get into Geese as a band. But it's really turned into, for me, a benefit, or it is one of their strengths, I think, on this album is his vocal versatility. And just like kind of the quirkiness he brings to it. Now, since this coming out, their new album, Getting Killed, has been released. I do enjoy Getting Killed quite a bit. For me, 3D Country's still king of their discography, and it's a decent gap. I mean, honestly, if I would have to say there's probably like 6 songs on 3D Country that I would rank above any song on Getting Killed. And that's not as much of a knock on Getting Killed as much as it just is how much I really love 3D Country. Not going to be for everybody, but it is definitely for me, and is at my number 6. At my number 5, we have a Spanish album from an artist that has already appeared on the list. This is Natalia Lafourcade with De Todas las Flores. And wow, this was my introduction to Natalia Lafourcade, and my initial impression was like intrigued. It was a little out of my comfort zone, but it was enough that I gave it more listens, and more listens has just done wonders for this album as it does for many of these in my top 10 of just, man, how outstanding the songwriting here is, the beautiful instrumentation, the way the mix just puts you in the room, and just, it feels so raw, but such tasteful musicianship. I can't understand any of the lyrics, and yet it's my number 5 album of all time, and has even gone up 5 spots from last year. maybe part of that is I actually got to go see her live on the tour for this album, and she performed this on the front end of that concert in its entirety. Just an amazing concert experience. This just beautiful, beautiful music. I'm so glad I branched out. Be willing to branch out a little bit in music. Now, that doesn't mean you're probably going to listen to a lot of things you might not like, but it's worth it. It's worth it to find things like this. Next, we have a classic at my number 4. It was my number 4 last year. This is my favorite from Stevie Wonder, his epic, larger than double album, Songs in the Key of Life. Normally, an album of this length is almost certain to be a downside for, like, I very rarely find albums this long that I find earn their length and stay engaging throughout. This is so consistent. I mean, the fact that it's as long as it is, and I can say for me, no skips on this album, is just really, really crazy. And then not only no skips, but a handful of, like, arguably some of the best songs ever written, and just groovy but uplifting music. You know, sometimes a lot of good music isn't on the uplifting side of the fence, and it's nice to have something like Stevie Wonder that I'm like, man, this stuff puts me in a good mood. Really great stuff. Yeah, man, Stevie, there's no one like him. This is a one of a kind individual. Next up, at my number 3, we have my former number 1. In fact, it's been my number 1, I think, the past couple years I have done this list. So it has been dethroned, not because I really like it any less, but this is We Like It Here by Snarky Puppy. Another fully instrumental album, but just for me, this takes what I enjoy about Snarky Puppy, their groovy jazz fusion, you know, lots of really great, tasteful soloing, and just, you know, it's recorded live, just the interplay of these amazing musicians in the room. It just, every time I listen to it, I'm just like, man, this album's amazing. Like, I do not tire of this one, and I have listened to it a ton. Amazing grooves. I've seen Snarky Puppy live multiple times. They're a great band to see live. Yeah, it's fun. Also, there's videos for all of the songs on this album, so you can actually watch them actually playing it in the room when this is recorded. Still, this is in fact my favorite instrumental album of all time. And despite being dethroned, still sits right up near the top here of my list. Passing it, though, and moving up one spot, is my favorite Tom Waits album, and this is Rain Dogs. I think, what is this, Tom Waits' 4th album on this list? It's probably the most of anybody. Yeah, I tell you, once I started enjoying his stuff more and more, it was like the rising sea raises all ships. What's the phrase? There's a phrase like that, but it felt like all of his albums, you know, started to go up the more I just came to love his style. And Rain Dogs is just, it is so, so good. I feel like just the best of everything that Tom Waits does in one album. It hits you right out of the gate with a pretty abrasive track if you've never listened to Tom Waits before. And this was not love at first sight. I will tell you, like, I didn't really like this album the first time I listened to it. But it is just proven to be endlessly replayable for me. It's one that, you know, still, despite listening to as much as I have, I'll have moments of where I'm going to go listen to music or go listen to a new album, and I'll go, or I could just listen to Rain Dogs, and I'll go listen to Rain. Like it still has that draw. And, you know, I don't know what exactly it is about it, but I just absolutely love this album from Tom Waits. But my number 1 of all time, as of this year, 2025, is actually brand new. And it felt wrong to do this on something like this. Like, doesn't it need to earn it a little bit more and give more time to determine if this really could be up here? But at the end of the day, when I'm making these lists, I am making it for where I am at right now. And I'll let years as they go by determine whether it belongs here or whether it drops off the list. You know, that's why it's interesting to see year over year how things move around. But right now, I just absolutely adore the album Imaginal Disc by Magdalena Bay. This is, I mean, if you're looking at other albums in my top 20, this is a little out of left field because it's a lot more pop leaning. It's very like synth pop, female vocal driven. And Magdalena Bay hasn't shown up on here. I like their other album, Mercurial, can't say it, Mercurial World. But for me, they took a massive leap to Imaginal Disc, and just, it's like everything I would want in a pop leaning album. I like kind of more electronic synthy sounds when they're done well, but this just, the palette of instrumentation here, I mean, it's got electric guitar and all these things. The bass grooves throughout this are so infectious, and just the other thing, I honestly, if you took these songs in isolation, I'd be like, they're amazing. I like across the board, there isn't a track I don't like here. But I think what really brings it to number one for me is when it's put together as an album. And this is another album on my list that just the flow of it is just like perfection. The way the tracks lead into each other, the way it, it's just different when it's one of those albums that you hear one of the songs in isolation and you're like, oh yeah, I love that song. But I love it even more when it comes out of, that other song that was before it. It has that down and then came into it, or flew into, we go into Angel on a Satellite for this really kind of beautiful exhale after a lot of the, more upbeat stuff to the album. But then that launches into the ballad of Matt and Mike at the end, which just gets you right back into this infectious groove. I just really, and it's not from a lack of like not listening to it enough. I have listened to this album to death. I got to the point where I was like, I need to stop listening to it so I don't get myself tired of it, but I just have not become tired of it. And when I was just trying to be honest on this list, I had to be honest that right now, Imaginal Disc is my favorite. And there you have it. As of right now, those are my favorite albums ever. If you want to see how this is going to evolve over time, or just other music recommendations, feel free to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.